Welcome, everybody. My name is Josh. We're going to give it a few seconds for people to join, but thank you guys so much for attending this webinar tonight. So as I said, just a few more seconds, and then we'll get started. All right, guys, welcome. My name is Josh again. This is a webinar with Picmonic talking about my 5 tips to efficiently manage your time in nursing school. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. We love questions, so make sure that you leave your questions in the chat. Throughout the webinar, we're going to do a Q&A at the end, so we'll do our best to get all the questions at the end there. We're also doing a drawing for a free 1-year subscription, so make sure that you stay until the end. You have to be present to win. And we're also going to be doing a special promotion for those who attend the whole webinar. So if you don't win the free 1-year subscription, you still get a special promotion at the end. So stay tuned for that. And then finally, this presentation is recorded. So it will be available on YouTube later on, and then you'll receive an email with the link whenever it goes live, okay? So a little bit about myself. My name is Josh. I am a new grad nurse in a level 3 NICU here in Florida. I graduated from Rasmussen College in Fort Myers in June of 2020. So still relatively new to the nursing world, but fresh out of school. And then I also served in the U.S. Army Reserves. So a little bit about my experience with Picmonic. I discovered Picmonic through another resource I was using for nursing school, and I just decided to give it a try. And I absolutely loved it, just fell in love with it. So during school, I used Picmonic almost every single day. Particularly, I would complete the daily quiz questions, and then I was a big fan of building my own playlists based on my lectures or my concept guides or study guides. And I think one of the things that I love most about Picmonic are the memorable characters, like the Hypo Hippo or the Fever Beaver. Those little mnemonics just kind of stuck out in my head and really helping me remember a lot of things. So as I said before, I'm going to be sharing some time management tips and strategies that I've learned while in the military, as well as with my experiences in nursing school. So I hope that these will help you be a better nursing student and a better nurse, because I still use some of these strategies at work as well. So when I first got to nursing school and I opened up my syllabus and I see all of the assignments that are due for the quarter, it got a bit overwhelming. And I'm sure if you're starting nursing school or you're already, partway into it, you have felt that same way. It's just very overwhelming to see everything that you have to do. So one of the things that I did while I was at boot camp was my strategy was to just make it to the next meal. So while we're at boot camp, every day when we'd go to the dining facility, in the morning, it would say how many days left we had for basic training. And when you first get there, it's, I was there for 20 weeks. So it was 100 and some odd days. And that's definitely, it seems like it's forever. But if you just kind of break it up into little chunks, it goes by a lot faster. So set those little short-term goals that can definitely kind of scale things back and make it feel not so overwhelming. So if you can just hit those little goals, those little landmarks, it'll make things a lot less overwhelming. And one of the ways that I did that was we would get our quarter was based up into weeks. So it was 11 weeks long, and I would separate out my assignments by each week. And some people use daily planners. A lot of students a lot of my cohort like to use daily planners. They didn't work for me. But if that's something that you're interested in, Picmonic has one available that you can download. It's actually really cool. It's really neat. But what I used instead was a whiteboard that I kept in my room, and I would break everything down. So I would write the date, I would write what classes I had that quarter, and then I would write the assignments that were due for each class and the date that they were due. So that kind of helped me prioritize what I needed to accomplish that week. That's basically like my to-do list. And then as I completed it, I would knock it off. So that's kind of what I did. And let's see. And for each day, so I would break it down even further. So I would have my week up on my board, and then for each day I would come in and I would just kind of notate which assignments I would try to knock out that day, or what kind of studying I would get done that day, and then I would knock those goals off as well, to make sure that, again, we're setting those small short-term goals and we're just making it through from one meal to the next kind of situation. And that really helped, I think, me stay focused and made everything more efficient as far as like my studying went. Which brings me to kind of the next point, which is make sure that you set aside time every single day to study for the NCLEX. I know when you're first starting, it seems like I have forever until I have to worry about that. So I was in an accelerated program, and it was an 18-month program. But I knew from day one, if I started studying then, at the end, I wouldn't have to study as much. I'm sure many of you have heard or you've read online where people graduate and then they say, okay, I'm going to study for the NCLEX now. In my personal opinion, I feel like that's wasted opportunity and wasted time, and it's just not very efficient. So from day one, make sure that you're studying. And so what I did was I used Picmonic, the daily quiz questions. I would knock those out, and I started small. I started with about 50 each day, and then I would build it up to, towards the end, I was doing 300 a day. And what this did was, because of the spaced repetition, it allowed me to review materials that I had already covered earlier in my program. Because of the way that my program was set up, we didn't really have a med surg class at the very end. We did that early on. And so it allowed me to review all of my med surg material without having to try and cram all of it in after I graduated. So that really made things more efficient for me. And towards the end, when I did graduate, to kind of help streamline and make everything a little bit easier, I used Picmonic's 4 weeks to NCLEX workbook. So while I was in nursing school, this wasn't available. I had to have one printed for myself, but it is available now as a workbook for you guys to purchase if you want. It's really cool. It comes in full color, and it just, like I said, it just kind of streamlines your studying towards the end if you want to have like an NCLEX study book. One of the other things I think is very important is to identify how you learn and how you best study. So for myself, like in class, in lectures, I'm not very good with taking notes, because what'll happen for me is I'll take a note while the professor is lecturing, and I'll forget what the professor said, and I'll forget what I wrote down. So you have to kind of figure out what learning style is best for you. And I think Picmonic worked really well for me because it was both visual and auditory, and I didn't have to worry about taking notes. So it's important for you to do that. What I would do instead in class, instead of just taking straight notes, is whatever the general topic was, I would write that down, and then I would come back home and I would search for it in Picmonic and then build my playlist off of that day's lecture. And I felt like that is what worked for me. One of the other pieces of advice that I got prior to entering nursing school was to use study groups. I know myself, and I know that I don't do study groups very well. I end up just kind of chit-chatting and getting off topic, and I feel like I get distracted and then I distract other people. And so groups really didn't work. Like the traditional group setting didn't work for me. We did kind of figure something out towards the end where um, two of the girls would come in and they would kind of uh, throw a question out there or throw a piece of information out there, and then I would write it up on the board. And so when I wrote it up on the board, I could see it. And then when they would tell me, um, I would listen to it first and then write it up. And that seemed to work better from a group standpoint for me. So kind of figure out your group dynamic and how you fit into that, if you want to use a group, because sometimes it can be very distracting and it's obviously not efficient. That's a waste of our time, right? And then finally, I know I'm moving really fast through this, but I'm just a fast talker, so I guess that allows us more time towards the end for questions. Um, Finally, I think one of the things that really helped me a lot, and prevented burnout, because nursing school is intense, is to take it one day at a time, and make sure that you set aside one day a week to reboot and just kind of refresh. So you hear it a lot now, especially as self-care. And what I would do is, on Saturdays in particular, most of the time, I would wake up, I would do a couple of quiz questions before breakfast, and then I would just spend the rest of the day with my family. And that really helped out. Like we would go out, we would, this was obviously pre-pandemic. We'd eat at a restaurant, or, we'd go to the park, or um, whatever it is, just to kind of unwind and take your mind off of school. I think that's really important. I also exercise during the week, which is important too. Whether, I did some weightlifting, but if you do cardio or you do yoga, whatever it is throughout the week, that's nice. Meditation, I did some meditation, but really one day to just kind of not worry about school at all. And then when you come back, I feel like you're better able to focus, and you have a little bit more energy, and you can kind of hit the ground running, start that week off strong. Um, so those are kind of my 5 tips. To just kind of recap what we talked about. Um, when you first get into nursing school, when you look at the big picture, everything that you have to accomplish throughout your program, or even, that semester or quarter, it can really be a bit overwhelming. So we need to make sure that we take it one day at a time and focus on our goal, which is to learn everything that we can so that we can pass the NCLEX. Keep your eyes on the prize, but make sure that we kind of break everything up into smaller pieces so we don't get overwhelmed, and it makes it a little bit easier to manage and prioritize our tasks. And like I said, I still do that today when I get to work. I'll show up to work and I look at my to-do list for the day, and I break it up by times, and I break it up by my initial assessment in the morning, and then I have my assessment in the afternoon, and then kind of the end of shift. So I break my day up into kind of 3 little areas to make sure that it doesn't get overwhelming, because if you look at everything you have to accomplish for the day, it can be a lot. But doing those short little goals, the bigger puzzle pieces will come together, and you'll be graduating before you know it. I know for me, school went by really, really fast. So, each day, each assignment, each Picmonic video, or each quiz question, it all culminates to that bigger picture, that that graduation, that passing the NCLEX, and getting that RN or LPN if you're an LPN student. Make sure you stay organized. So for me, that was writing all my stuff on my whiteboard, and then writing my daily goals, and then find a study habit that works for you. That's really important. We don't want to waste time in things that are going to distract us or deter us from completing our little goals for the day. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time to figure out. An example is I failed my second mental health exam, and that was because of the way I was studying for that particular exam. And so I readjusted, changed up my study habits, and I ended up getting like a 98 on the final. So you have to be honest with yourself. If something is not working, you got to change it, and you have to change it fast, because nursing school moves fast. And then finally, just make sure you take time for yourselves, guys. I know I was feeling burnt out towards the end with all the assignments, and when I wrapped up, the pandemic had just started, so I spent a lot of time inside, and that can be exhausting. So make sure you take time to yourself, refresh. That really helps you stay motivated, helps you stay focused, and it'll help you retain that information. And then it also affects your attitude, right? You need to have the right attitude if you're going to be successful. You have to be able to stay positive, and you have to have a can-do attitude. So negativity is going to make it really, really difficult for you to be successful in school, as well as in the workforce. So I think that's all I have. Again, that went by pretty fast, but we have some time for Q&A, so we'll address some questions here. Let's see. So this from Mark. We have, from a time management perspective, what's the best way to incorporate studying for the NCLEX into the final semester? How far out from the planned test dates should we start, and how much time dedicated each day should be spent towards NCLEX review? So as I said before, the earlier you can start, the better. Start now if you can, but if you're close to graduating, the 4 weeks to NCLEX workbook, I think, is really efficient. It really breaks things down, I think, and builds upon itself over the 4 weeks. I know for me, my strategy was I wanted to be able to take the NCLEX like as soon as possible. As soon as I got my authorization to test, I wanted to schedule it and just knock it out. I didn't want to, because I believe, I don't know if there's actually any studies, but this is what my instructors told me. The longer you wait to take the NCLEX, the higher chance you have of failing. So, so start studying now. Do quiz questions every day, and then slowly increase them. And then the closer you get, you can start decreasing the questions. I think I still did up to 100 a day right before I did it. So I think it really depends on how well you are at retaining information, how much ground you feel like you have to make up. So it's really kind of where you are now and where you want to be by the time you take the NCLEX. I hope that helps answer the question. It's kind of tricky because it's very personalized, very individual. Let's see. How did I implement my Picmonic quiz study along with ATI workload we have to complete for nursing school? Also, did you feel Picmonic helped you in order to level for your ATI proctored exams? And this was from Michelangelo. So Mike, like I said, I did the Picmonic quiz questions every single day. And then for ATI, I would do the practice exams. They were required for us. So with the practice exams, I would, on the areas that I needed to work on, I would look in the ATI book for their explanation, and then I would try to find the Picmonic videos that covered that particular topic as well. Just because, again, I'm a video, or I'm like an auditory visual person, so that stuff really helped to stick out in my mind. One of the other things that I didn't mention was with the playlists, if you download the app for your phone, is I would play my Picmonic playlist in the car while I was driving. Now, these are videos that I've already watched, so they're really just kind of refreshers. And then I would just try to visualize them while I was driving and listening to it. And I felt like that helped me retain it. But Picmonic definitely helped me level on my ATIs. I leveled on every single one the first attempt. The only one that I didn't use Picmonic for, or the only two, were fundamentals and pharmacology, and that was because I found Picmonic after I took those. I took those very early on in my program. What sources did you use to get your daily NCLEX questions? So Picmonic, I did seriously, this was the only study guide I used for the NCLEX. I didn't use any other study guide. I didn't use Hearst reviews. I didn't use the Saunders book. I didn't use any of that. I only used Picmonic. Early on in school, I also used, it's now called nursing.com, but I didn't really use the questions from that, just kind of the videos in there. But when it came to questions, I really only used Picmonic, and then we had to do ATI. So I guess you can say I used ATI, but it was a requirement, so it wasn't voluntary. Tips for new grads studying using Picmonics in preparation for NCLEX. In addition to the Picmonic and 4 weeks book, time to prepare for NCLEX. Again, the time is going to be very individualized. You know, I don't know if you'll ever feel ready to take it. I felt ready, but even when I finished my NCLEX, I was like, I don't know if I passed. It was 50-50. So it kind of depends on you and where you are or where you feel you are in your studying. I think ATI was really helpful in that perspective. If your program uses ATI, that's awesome, because it kind of it gives you an idea of the questions are very similar to the NCLEX, and I feel like they also identify your weak areas where you need to study. So if you're that far along in the program where you're kind of wrapping everything up, if you can find kind of an NCLEX simulation or, you know, that final ATI exam, the comprehensive exam, that'll kind of identify where your weak areas are and where you should focus your studying. That'll be the most efficient way to do it, because it will, you know, spending time studying stuff you're already strong at is not going to help you. You need to cover those weak areas. What is suggested for those who are preparing for classes? So, Crystal, like you're going to be a new nursing student. So the main things are, you know, understanding your how you learn and your study habits. Make sure that you stay organized, and make sure that you're studying every single day. Take 1 day a week to kind of refresh, reboot, but, you know, kind of everything I already talked about. And go in with a positive attitude and be eager to learn. Learn something new every single day. And I still do this at work, and I think some of the night shift nurses aren't very appreciative of it. But when I show up, I am excited and I'm positive and I'm passionate about what I'm doing. But every day is an opportunity to learn. Every day there's a new challenge. And so if you show up eager and ready to learn, especially at clinicals, I think that'll make a huge difference in your learning experience. Did you buy a book, online subscriptions, apps? So I obviously subscribed to Picmonic. I didn't buy the book, the Picmonic book. At the time, it was only available as a PDF. So I downloaded it and had it printed at a local print shop. So there was that book that I used. No other NCLEX books. We were given our ATI books as just part of our program. That was part of our tuition. So I had that, but I didn't really use it. But that was what I used. Apps, the Picmonic app. I used the nursing.com just because of the video lectures. Some of them were pretty helpful. And then for clinicals, I used Hippocrates for some med information. That was pretty much it from there. So hope that answered your question, Amy. Oh, Amy Kruger. There's multiple Amy's in here. Having a hard time with clinical paperwork and studying for exams. I completely understand. So for those that aren't in school yet, during clinical, you have to, or after anyways, we had to do care plans, which takes a long time, but is very beneficial in helping you understand how to intervene when your patient has problems, which in this case would be called nursing diagnoses. Studying for exams. So what I would do is I would take the concept guides or the study guides that our instructors would give us, and I would build the Picmonic playlists off of that. And then obviously the daily quiz questions. I would read, so I had ebooks when I was in school. I didn't have actual paper books. And the reason I liked the ebooks was because I could search for specific phrases or specific conditions. And so that I felt like really helped me with studying, because I could hit the key points that I needed to hit in my study guide, as opposed to just trying to read the entire chapter. Like for pathophysiology, that was literally insane. It was literally impossible. You couldn't read all of the material in the 1 week time that you needed. Let's see. So I'm recently graduated and I'm tutoring the nursing students. What tips should I use in helping them use Picmonics in my tutoring? That's a good question. So what I usually recommend to people is watch just a few videos a day. You don't have to get through like 20 videos in one sitting. That's a lot. That's a lot of material. So maybe 5 to 10 videos, depending on how long they are. I would just watch the education portion, but you can do the education and story if you want, and then do the quiz questions. And I forgot to mention this. So whenever I would do my quiz questions, I would read the rationale every single time. So sometimes whenever you answer the question, it doesn't, like the rationale doesn't pop up. So you know what the correct answer is, but you don't necessarily know why. And the why is very important. It doesn't tell you the patho behind it or the mechanism of action. So it's very important that you read the rationales. So I would read the rationales every single time. So that way I understood why the right answer was the right answer, right? So same thing when I would watch the videos. So I would watch the videos and I would kind of pause it for a second, click on it, read the rationale. I didn't realize that at first. I discovered that later on. And when I started incorporating that in, it made a huge difference. And it's, you can recall things, not just for exams, but in clinical settings. When you're dealing with a certain situation, you can recall, your pathophysiology or, your medication or whatever the case may be. Let's see. So that might help them. Elisa, having them read the rationales whenever they're doing their Picmonics, not just listening to it. Amy Adams, we have 10 chapters to read. How do you comprehend and retain the information? That's a lot. That's a lot of reading. Like I said, for patho, we would have crazy reading like that. So what I would usually do is I would try to take the key subjects for each chapter and either use Picmonic or use nursing.com and watch the lectures and watch the videos from that. That really saved a lot of time. And then doing the daily quiz questions with the spaced repetition, that just helps you retain it. So Pharm for NCLEX. I don't think I had that many questions on pharmacology on the NCLEX. Really, it's understanding the mechanism of action and what is the goal? What is it you're trying to accomplish with your medication? And then any major side effects, especially or adverse effects, I should say, any adverse effects to watch out for. Are the Picmonic quiz questions similar to NCLEX style questions? I wouldn't say that they're similar to NCLEX, but it just helps you retain the information. And like I said, if you read the rationales, it will become more clear. It'll help you with your understanding, and then that's going to lead to better critical thinking for the NCLEX if you can work through that rationale. What do you recommend for someone who wants to go into NICU, have a better chance of getting in and job interview or interview job, since I know it's pretty competitive? So I did a non-traditional kind of route. What I did was I joined an organization, A1, it's called A1, the Association for Women's Health, Obstetric and Neonatal Nurses, and I attended their meetings. Again, this was pre-pandemic, so maybe a little bit different now. They do have virtual meetings, but there's also NAN, the National Association of Neonatal Nurses. In my area, they weren't an active chapter, so I went with AWAN. And I would show up to the meetings. I'd be the only student nurse there most of the time, and I would try to speak with the nurses. And two of the chapter leaders for the Central Florida chapter knew that I wanted to be a NICU. I let them know that I wanted to be a NICU, and they reached out to the NICU nurse manager, and she said to email her to set up an interview and to email her my resume. So networking is key, I believe, to landing a position, not just in the NICU, but any kind of competitive area or just any job in general. If you network, you let people know you're excited or you're passionate or you're enthusiastic about getting in that particular specialty, that'll be really important. So a lot of people also suggested trying to get like a CNA job or a patient tech job in that particular department. That can definitely help. If you're towards the end of school, if you have a preceptorship, my program didn't offer a preceptorship. So if you have a preceptorship and you can get into the NICU or whatever department you want to get into, that can also help. That can often lead to a job as well. What did I switch up once I failed the test that made it successful in the last one? I'm trying to remember. I think what I did was for that first exam, I think I only used Picmonic. But there was a lot of questions on that particular exam that Picmonic, or there was a lot of material that Picmonic didn't cover. And I think I had been doing so well in nursing school. I think I just felt like, oh, I'll be okay. I'll just work through it. And yeah, that wasn't the case. That was a devastating blow, let me tell you. It was a very humbling experience. So what I did was I actually started to read the textbook a little bit, but just, again, I would search for specific things and just read on that particular area, the rationales on it. And then I would supplement that with like Picmonic and nursing.com. So for that one, I actually had to read the textbook. But for a lot of the other ones, I didn't read the textbook too much. So that was the major change that I made. Let's see. So without studying for 8 hours a day, this is from Shakila. I hope I'm saying that right. What do you suggest for someone who has a hard time reading all the assigned chapters? What would be an easy way to retain and understand the material without studying for 8 hours a day? I'm gonna be honest, I studied for 8 to 9 hours a day. So that might be difficult. It really depends on the program you're in, but being in an accelerated program, I spent a lot of time studying and doing homework. That's just nursing school. For reading all the assigned chapters, I would suggest you, like I said, search for key topics based on your study guide so that you can find the information that you need, the pertinent information, because sometimes there's a lot of information in there that you don't really need for your exam or for the NCLEX. And then supplement that with video lectures if you can find them, or just simpler reading materials. There are simpler reading materials and resources out there. Let's see. I am stuck with a new instructor that's never taught before, and it's been like taking a step backwards. Do you have any suggestions for studying when learning isn't happening in the classroom? That's a great question. So I was never a big fan of lectures. I felt like, sometimes we just stay on a topic for too long. And you're like, okay, we can move along. Or sometimes they're just not conveying the information very well. So what I would suggest is developing that studying at home. So I'm very like a self-paced type of learner. So kind of what I suggested before, write down the key topics for the day, and then go home and develop your own study plan based on those key topics. So like I used Picmonic and nursing.com. I would find those video lectures and I would find those Picmonic videos and I would watch those. And then I would answer the Picmonic quiz questions on them and read the rationales and do it that way. Sometimes nursing school is like that. Sometimes it's very much you're on your own and you have to learn on your own. It's obviously not ideal, but it's there's a shortage of nursing instructors, and there's a shortage of good nursing instructors. So, all right, guys. So I think that was the last question of the day. If we didn't get to your question, we will do our best to send you or to try and answer that question for you later. You're also free to reach out to me on Instagram, direct message. I'm happy to answer any and all questions there. I'm happy to and help nursing students or graduate nurses with any information that I can. So I am NICU_nurse_Josh on Instagram if you want to check that out. So the winner of the 1-year free subscription is Robert Linko. Congratulations. It's very exciting. And we have, so the special promotion is 30% off a Picmonic subscription. The link is in the chat, and that's good for 24 hours. So make sure you jump on that as soon as you can. It's an amazing offer. So I hope you guys enjoyed the presentation. I hope you got something out of it. Thank you guys so much for the questions. And again, please feel free to reach out to me on Instagram. You can direct message me. I'm happy to answer all your questions. You know, I think it's important that we develop a culture of support and positivity. You know, we need to break this stigma of nurses eating their young. I'm sure plenty of you guys have heard that. So make sure that, you know, you pass it along as well. So we're all in this together. And one of the quotes that I learned while I was in nursing school, and I think is very important, and I'm trying to live by every day, is faster alone, further together. So when I first entered nursing school, I was trying to do everything on my own, but I soon realized that, you know, this is a team effort. Nursing is very much a team effort. So build each other up, help each other out as best that you can, share all the resources, share your information, because, you know, as competitive as we can be with each other in school, we're all going to end up in the same place. So, right, you want the best prepared nurse sitting next to you when, you know, crap hits the fan. But again, thank you guys so much. I hope you guys have a wonderful night. And I hope to see you guys around. All right. Thank you guys.